I want to give a brief, if you will, understanding of the post-Obama era. And this was the era, the pre-Obama era was the staging ground for a segment of humanity, of Americans who are the black or African American or liberals in that regard, or bleeding heart liberals, I should say, that somehow or another, that the 250 years from 1619 to 1865 slavery had been atrocious. And now at the pinnacle of the American government stood a black man who was going to take the helm and the history of this great nation of amber waves and grain fields and majestic and purple mountains, and he was going to be the president, and was a black man. The journey from Ghana across the Middle Passage into South Carolina, into Jamestown, and now that the journey has come full cycle, that the government itself was going to be headed and helmed by a black man. Now, we're now in the post-Obama era by 6 years of the presidency and by 14 years since he announced his campaign. There are a couple of things I want to just get to say here with respect to this post-Obama era. Howard University, an astute, well, if you will, recognized university or school that has focused on training black people. They're Hamites, but that's what they call themselves, has put together a petition for reparations. And the petition they put together for reparations stated along these lines that if you are the son of a former slave, or if you were a slave, if that's possible, then the American government should pay reparations to you if you can demonstrate that you are the son, grandson, or great-grandson of a slave or a former slave. And so that is what Howard University has put together. Now, reparations have not gone anywhere, and I'm not here preaching or suggesting that I support that idea. What I want to do in the post-Obama era is state this, because there was this euphoria that a black man was going to take the helm of the white government, that justice had finally come full cycle, that the black man that was once a slave or the son of a slave was going to now lead the slave nation that has now put away his slavery ideas. Obama was neither. Obama did not qualify for reparations because, first of all, his mama was white. We all know that. There's no disputing that. His mama was white. And allegedly, his father, Barack Obama Sr., was an African and had never been a slave, nor had any of his ancestry been a slave here in America. So Obama didn't even qualify for reparations. So the whole idea about taking the helm of the government that once enslaved slaves is now being led by a former slave. Not true. Not true. And to add insult to injury, it's just one thing if he'd just not been his father, neither his kindred had ever been a slave in America. But his mama was white, for crying out loud. And a number of people stated that if you go further back into, the Dunham's family tree, I don't know if it's true, that they themselves may have been slave owners. That's number one. So in this post-Obama era, I just want to take you a little bit and just take a view of where we are now politically, racially, economically, to try to discover, was all that euphoria well-founded, or was it a farce? Was it a ripoff? Was it a game? Well, one of the things about this so-called first black president, who wasn't black, he, unlike any other president in the history of the 43 presidents, he gave the courts the power through appointment and through presidential euphoria the power to redesign the human sexual identity scale. Under Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, who were appointees to the court, and at the time the court was pretty solidly an even court and could go liberal on its ideas. This so-called black president, who wasn't black, and his mama was white, and he didn't qualify for reparations because nobody in his family had ever been a slave. So that's a great misnomer that if you're going to have, my argument was if you're going to have a black president, you ought to have a black mama. Nancy Wilson, Shirley Chisholm, for crying out loud. Heck, Aretha Franklin, I don't care. Anybody but Stanley Ann Dunham. Why should we give that honor to a white woman? Not that there's anything racist about that. It's just, then don't call him a black president. You got a white mama. And not only that, but a former slave or the son of a former slave still has not taken the helm of the great American government because Obama was neither. All right? That's just true. But what he did do was he gave the courts and the nation the power to redesign human sexual and identity scale in what is now known as the passing of the Same-Sex Marriage or the Marriage Equality Act that has been cemented by the Supreme Court. What do you mean by that? This is biblical in terms of understanding. It's epidemic. And God Almighty said in the first 2 chapters of his creation process, he told Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply. And he made them male and female, made he them, not just one gender. And then he told them to be fruitful and to multiply. What the Supreme Court has done in America under the leadership of Obama is that they have officially, legally changed the human sexual identity scale. And to be fruitful and multiply no longer applies to some married couples. For instance, like Pete Buttigieg, who is now the head of the Department of Transportation under the Biden administration. He calls Chastity, the man that he is legally married to under the strength of the Obama court's decision. I guess his name is Chastity. That's what, I'm not sure exactly why, but they now, they can't multiply. They cannot. They cannot, and they have broken and superseded and ignored the word of God when he said to Adam and to all of humanity, be fruitful and multiply. There's an event, and I watched it with great amazement this morning, the Supreme Court hearing on the issue of the Texas law, especially the vigilante law about the outlawing of abortions in the state of Texas that have been going on now for the last 3 months. And when this matter first came before the Supreme Court, brought by the Justice Department, the Supreme Court decided to punt. They wouldn't rule on it. But what this law does, as written by the Texas legislature, is that it attacks Roe versus Wade from the position that anyone, first by the state of Texas outlawing that abortion after a 6-week period is illegal. And that if anyone has an abortion after that period and any individual or private citizen is aware of that abortion event, that private citizen can sue the person who had the abortion and the doctor who performed the abortion and the institution where the abortion took place for sums of money. As an individual, you probably heard about citizens' arrest. This gives every citizen in America or across the world the opportunity to sue anybody in Texas that had an abortion in Texas after the 6-week mandate. And this is, and even in the moderate terms, a draconian law giving individuals the right to be vigilantes regarding the issue of abortion, whether abortion is right or wrong. Now, we know the stare decisis issue regarding Roe versus Wade has been the law of the land for 50 years, whether you agree with it or not. I don't agree with it, but that's not my argument now. But it's been the law of the land for 50 years, and it's very difficult for any state to actually take it down. So what Texas has done has done an end run and come in the back door and stated anyone who does it, the state won't prosecute you because that puts the state in a vulnerable position. But a person, individual, your nephew, your cousin, your grandson can sue you at the court. Now, this whole idea of the courts, and now I listened this morning with great intensity as Justice Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and Gorsuch, who are appointees of Donald Trump, asked questions. And it seems to me that they are looking at this matter now post-Obama, and they're looking at the court now having a state court actually run the Supreme Court, making the Supreme Court not the last word of the laws of the land, but simply crippled by, if you will, a vigilante type idea. And I think what they've done in the state of Texas is draconian. I think it is psychopath, if you will, court proceedings by the state legislatures to appoint people and to give individual citizens the right to sue someone they knew had an abortion. They didn't have anything with your family member, with your friend, with your wife. And you can just that is not as bad as Obama doing an end run around the biblical statement of be fruitful and multiply, or changing the human sexual identity and saying man can marry the man. That's within it from the biblical perspective, from my perspective as a preacher, from my perspective as a member of the human society of all these years that its existence is draconian. And not only that, but it's unthinkable that anyone would want to change the identity of humanity at that level, and the courts have agreed. But the reason why the Texas abortion court is interesting to me is because, people will look at many of the people that are post-Obama understanding persons will look at what Texas has done and say how awful it is, and the Supreme Court must do something to stop this law that has changed human sexual identity. And they're all liberals, they all support abortion, etc. But what they fail to understand as they look at this draconian, if you will, this law that Texas dragged up out of the toilet, if you must, the hearts of the legislators that would give individual citizens the right to pursue persons who had an abortion, it's just unthinkable that you would turn vigilantes loose on a woman who had an abortion. It's unthinkable, but it's also unthinkable that you would turn humanity loose for man to marry man or woman to marry woman. And both these court decisions are absolutely incredible in terms of just how draconian they are and unhumane they are. But yet the courts have been manipulated to this degree. I want to ask you to consider also what's happening with the Texas court. And I believe Neil Gorsuch and, at least Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, when the ruling comes down, I think they're going to rule in such a way as to strike down the vigilante part. They may even strike down the entire Texas draconian abortion, if you will, attempt at overturning Roe versus Wade. If you're going to do it, it should not be done in that underhanded way. But the other thing I think is that we have to recognize is that some laws are unjust. People can write laws, and if you're in the majority and y'all are all thinking along the same way, even if it's unjust, but you can make an unjust law work. And anybody who disagrees with it, if you're not a part of the majority of a state legislator or a state itself or a court system procedure, Laws can be written that are unjust. And how do you deal with unjust laws? Which is what we now find on the docket this very day, the 1st of November. It's on the docket of the Supreme Court to be dealt with, the Texas abortion law. Why is this important? Because I believe that the same-sex or marriage equality law is anything but marriage equality. Now, that's my personal opinion. I believe it is an unjust law. I believe it is an inhumane law. To order the rest of the world to agree with man marrying man. And the dissolution, the dissolving of the human sexual identity to have no sexual or gender identity, and to force that on the rest of humanity, especially those of us with biblical beliefs, or those with us with just a casual review of humanity and history of humanity itself. There's always been male and female, and that's how we get more males and females. But when we lock it down to just male and male or female and female, we shut the door on being fruitful and multiplying. It's an unjust law in my estimation. But here, there have been a lot of people who've made a lot of hay over unjust laws. And, Dr. Martin Luther King is a part of his, and Henry David Thoreau and his theses out of Harvard regarding the fact that some laws are unjust and unethical, and they must be demonstrated and protested against and rightfully disobeyed. But you can't disobey the law that they've now put together, a vigilante law regarding the abortion, nor can you disobey the law of same-sex marriage equality. They will excoriate you. By the way, I want to ask you to pray for Dave Chappelle. A lot of people have said, well, Netflix stayed with him. Everybody else has left him. No, there's no doubt about it in my mind. Listen, the LGBTQ community, you have no idea the power that these people wield. For good or evil, how you want to say it, listen, Dave Chappelle is through in the entertainment business. It's over with. His career is over with. He may not mind. He may not even care. He ended it himself some time ago. Why he came back, I have no idea. But I can tell you this. The LGBTQ community will not let Dave Chappelle have freedom of speech. They will not let him do it. All he said was, listen, I don't hate you, and because I disagree with transgender, or because I disagree with what Dave Chappelle has said, because I disagree with LGBTQ, because I disagree, don't mean I hate you or not, I'm afraid of you. I just have the right of free speech and opinion. They say, no, you don't. You can't speak out against us. You cannot, when you speak against us as transgenders that you disagree with, we consider that hate speech, but it isn't hate speech. But it's all over with for Dave Chappelle, or anybody else for that matter, in the post-Obama era. Thank Obama for this, Dave Chappelle. Thank your first allegedly black president for this power that the law now has. You can't even disagree. A simple disagreement is now considered by the LGBTQ as hate speech. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. But that's the way of the world. And they control the media. They control the education systems. They control economics. They control Wall Street. They control, they pull the power levers. Even Donald John Tribulation Trump will not speak ill against the LGBTQ. And though many of his supporters do not believe in same-sex marriage, he will not raise his voice. He will not raise his voice against the LGBTQ community, not even Donald Trump. But I think it's important that we recognize that all of this is the post-Obama era. So this is what Obama's giving. This is what the first black president has given you. And not much else. I've been around the barn for quite some time. And I've lived in Harlem for 40 years. Can I talk to you? And after this, I promise not to inflict myself upon you any further. I've lived in Harlem for 40 years. I have never, in the 40 years of my living in this community, even on the great crack epidemic, have I ever seen homelessness, drug addiction, poverty, and power, drug addiction, poverty, and homelessness, pardon me, at the level it is now. And this is the level in the post-Obama era. That is to say that it was never like this before Obama. It was never like what we are now witnessing, that the men sleeping on concrete sheets, cardboard as their covers, men shooting up drugs, men that were nodding out, men walking down the streets, bareback, butt showing, the wretchedness, the wretchedness of post-Obama poverty, specifically of the Hamite man, has never been the level of where it's at now. It has never been as acute. It has never been as multitudinous. Over 50,000 homeless beings, people sleeping on the street. The city of New York have no place to put them, and I'll imagine the cities of South Central Los Angeles and other places as well. This is post-Obama. What I am saying to you, I've lived longer. I once was young, and now I'm older. I have never seen brokenness of black people at the level at which it is now since Obama. Before Obama, under Clinton, under Bush, under Reagan, it was bad, but it is 1,000% worse post-Obama era. And it very well may have to do with the fact that so many people, especially Hamites, or black men in particular, have become disillusioned. When the flags were being waved that a black man was now, since 1619 up to 1865, slavery in America, the emancipation, the Civil War, and now 150 years later, a black man is going to take the helm of the great nation that was once a slave-holding nation. A black man is going to take the seat of government. He's going to take the helm of government. And the euphoria, the excitement about that the world was going to change, that we've stepped into a new era, that justice has finally come, and that power and the black man will rise like the phoenix. But what has happened? It's just the opposite. Trust me, you can disagree with me, but the truth is the truth and the facts are the facts. There's a worse, and I tend to believe that and it's going to get worse, because what's happening is that the Hamite man now, he's become so disillusioned. Well, if having a black president, all we got was a rearranging of the gender and marriage ideal, the sexual identity, but nothing else. And now he's gone off to live in Martha's Vineyard, in one of the richest living places on the East Coast of America. And yet, the homelessness, the men sleeping in the street, you saw them? Have you ever seen any? It wasn't like this during the Great Depression. It has never been this bad. It is never, and this is post-Obama. You would think you would never see that again since the helm of the presidency was taken by a black person. Well, first of all, as I said before, his mama was white. One other thing I'd like to say is this, is that church attendance has gone through the basement. Nobody goes anymore. He went and performed at the funeral of the Dylan Roof assassination there in the Mother A.B. Zion Church there in Charleston, South Carolina. But after that, and he went there and he was styling and profiling, trying to do Amazing Grace, and not doing it with a sense of the Sunday school, of the church, not doing it in the sense of being saved by grace, but he did it in the sense of a rapper. Amazing grace, how sweet. And he had no idea what the song meant. But church attendance, these same brothers now have fewer members, by 60% less members coming to their meetings now than they did before this man stood there, because people become disillusioned in church attendance. Church attendance in the Hamite black community used to be the mainstay. It was where everybody went when they couldn't go nowhere else. Not anymore, because he has disillusioned the fact that God is and that God will. And so the other item is that there's now no existence of a plant bed for church growth. That is to say that the younger children, the generation of people that are 18, 19, 20, 25 years old are going to go to church or join a church, and then they're going to bring their children, and then their church. That's over with. The last evangelistic moment of the church happened after Obama took office, and there's nobody else joining churches since then. Not since Obama. Not since that. And here, there's one other thing I think is important that I need to state, and then I'm truly going to leave you to your own devices. We're in the tribulation. I was dead right about Obama. I was. Back in 2007 and 2008, I was dead right. Now, you may not want to admit that. You may want to think I'm wrong, but your black president didn't give you anything. And I want to talk particularly now to Hamite women. Because of the rearranging of the sexual identity now, a lot of weak men have caved in to their inner, if you will, unclean spirits of same sex, taking the men that could have married you out of the game, off the table, leaving you as a woman with no alternative. After 12 years of Obama, and you look now and see the men are taken off the table and are uniting with men, and Hollywood, media, the news media, the universe, listen to this, men, Hamite men, in my estimation and observation and my data, stats, if Hollywood or the media, news media, universities see a Hamite brother leaning towards Obama's marriage equality, same-sex, transgender ideologies, unlike Dave Chappelle, they promote that person. They give them professorships at Harvard, at Yale, at Princeton. They put them on the CNN like Don Lemon, you know. They take people off of CNN who don't go down that road. You ain't going to get on, as a Hamite, you ain't getting on CNN if you don't go down that road. And, you know, the same thing happening with MSNBC. All those men you see on those news reporters, all of them lean in to LGBTQ. Otherwise, and then the ones you see, the professor, the college professor coming in there, giving their ideas about this, that. And then, of course, Black Lives Matter that's been given all this money, all this media power to become the mighty giants. Basically, the leadership of Black Lives Matter is all, if you will, lesbian women. Best I'm able to determine what I've seen. Somebody can prove me wrong. So what happens is that the power brokers, the Wall Streets, the colleges, the universities, the Hollywood, the media people, the television people, they promote the people who promote LGBTQ, and they demote or excoriate people like Dave Chappelle or like James David Manning. So as a result of that, there are fewer men to marry the Hamite sister. They just aren't around anymore. And I think the other thing that we need to be mindful of is that the suffering now of the Hamite woman is off the charts. There are more unmarried Hamite women than you can shake a stick at, and there are fewer mothers. In fact, the Hamite woman per capita compared to her counterpart of the Japheth or the Shemite women, there'll be fewer mothers, meaning there will be fewer grandmothers. And disproportionately, the Hamite woman, now as you look around in her 50s, 60s, and 70s, she ain't married, and she probably ain't gonna get married. It's just all over with. You know, she at 35 or 40, it was still a run for the money. But after Obama came, all bets off. She ain't gonna get married. She's disproportionately will not wear a wedding ring. She will never know what it is to wear a wedding ring on her finger, or to have a baby, to carry a baby to term in her womb. That kind of thing is, as a result, in my estimation, my understanding of humanity, my look at the social economics and social dynamics, and a close study, and as a 40-year resident of Harlem, and a 40-year preacher of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ, and one who has integrated himself into every affair of humanity, I now say to you that there'll be fewer women having the experience of giving birth to babies both in the Japheth, Shemite, and the Hamite. They just won't know what it is to carry a baby in the womb. They won't know that. By a percentage that is going to be overwhelming and will bring about, I think, a breed, if you will, of just uncontrollable ideologies. But there are women who ain't going to never wear a wedding ring. And all of what I've just said over the last half an hour can be attributed to one man and one man only, Barack Hussein Obama. He's the one. He is the one. That's what they said when they thought this so-called black man was going to take the helm of the American government after slavery. It's come full circle. A black man is going to stand at the helm of the world's greatest government and be the world's most powerful man. And we'll never see black people sleeping in the street, shooting up dope, homelessness, going to jail, or getting shot by a police officer if it ever again. All of that is over with now. You can say you love me, but it's all over now. Yeah, some Mick Jagger. It's all over now. But it wasn't. It got worse. It got worse. And what's happening to Mother Harlem? I've been a resident of Harlem for 40 years. I live in Harlem. I wake up to the sounds and smells of Harlem every day of my life. What has happened to Mother Harlem would bring a tear to even the hardest, cruelest person's eye. What has happened to Mother Harlem would bring a tear to David Duke's eye. It is, I'm not saying he's the cruelest or the meanest. I just want to make an example of one you think who would never cry for Argentina, who would never cry for Harlem. I think David Duke and a lot of other people see what Obama has done to Harlem. Who's going to cry for Argentina? Who's going to cry for Harlem? And I speak as authority. I live here. I'm 40. I'm not like these rest of these guys, these Cornel Weston creeps. I live here. I know the people. I walk among the people. I'm an authority on Harlem. Ask the students at Columbia University. But what has happened to Mother Harlem will bring up a tear to the Bedford man that started the Ku Klux Klan. At any rate, everybody, we're in the post-Obama era. Are you happy now? Did we get there yet? I'm James David Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant.
And God let me hear the Honorable James David Manning on the radio. And he was at 135th and 5th Avenue preaching there. And when the drug guys said, you can't preach here, you're on our territory, we're going to kill you. He said, no, God told me to come here and preach, and I'm going to preach. And somebody called the captain, and he came and said, take your church and your people and go back. Take your people and go back to your church. We don't want no bloodshed. He said, there will be no bloodshed. God told me to come here and preach, and I'm going to preach. I said, oh, God, that's my man. I called my sister, come and hear this man. Come hear this man. She said, who is that? I said, I don't know. But in my heart, I knew he knew the truth. So I thank and praise God for being in this house.